Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's educational workshop. I'm Rebecca, the program manager at CSC South Bay, and happy to welcome you to this workshop titled Building Resilience. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, CSC South Bay is a premier nonprofit organization providing vital social and emotional support to families facing cancer, including patients, caregivers, and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our program includes support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational workshops like this one. If you'd like to hear more about our services or join a community, please visit our website at cscsouthbay.org. Before I introduce today's speaker, we ask you to keep your microphone muted to eliminate any distracting background noise. You may, however, enter any questions into the chat feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window at any time. Aimee Sax, MSW, is the California Support Program Manager and a social worker at Sharsheret, where she provides free, confidential, and personalized support to women and families facing breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and the genetic predispositions towards them. She got her MSW at UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. She loves to connect with others, whether they're discussing cancer, advocacy, parenting, or shows on Bravo. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Aimee. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to share my slides. Hold on one moment. Okay. So thank you so much, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be back with this community again. And I see lots of names from the Sharsheret community on our participants list today, and some faces I recognize. So it's nice to see everybody all together. Just a quick word about Sharsheret. Thank you. You mentioned most of this in your introduction, so I'm not going to read it again. But what I will say is that while we're very proud to be a Jewish organization with a lot of expertise in the increased risk in our community, and the certain issues that might come up, we are absolutely here for everyone regardless of background. And while our services do focus on breast and ovarian cancer and the predispositions towards them, every once in a while we get a call from somebody with a different type of cancer. We're not going to hang up the phone on you. You might not qualify for all of our services, but you absolutely qualify to talk to one of our social workers and get maybe referrals to resources that are more in line with what you're looking for. But absolutely, we're here for everybody. And everything we do is completely confidential, completely free, and personalized to your specific needs and interests. So a little bit about me. I don't usually do this on a talk or a training that I do, but I feel like with this topic, a lot of times people are thinking, what are your credentials? Why are you the one talking about this? So I wanted to just share a little bit about the fact that I think anybody can talk about resilience because we've all been through hard times. But I do think a lot of times in the cancer community, people do wonder, like, is the person telling me these things? Like, have they been in my shoes? And so, no, I have not had cancer diagnosis myself. But I have been a cancer caregiver to loved ones and also caregivers of other illnesses. And I've also been working at Sharsheret for 8 years, speaking with people who are going through it every day. And while I have a lot of training from before Sharsheret and in my, trainings and ongoing trainings at Sharsheret, certainly I've learned so much from this community. We've also all lived through the craziness of the last 4 years since COVID. I think like earlier this week was the 5-year anniversary of the first person getting symptoms in China of COVID. It's crazy to think it's been that long. But it also feels like maybe it's been 15 years that we've been living through this craziness. And certainly that's hit the cancer community really differently as an immunocompromised, segment of our population. And then also, the Jewish community has been through quite a bit in the last, year or so since October 7th. And so, when we talk about resilience, we don't just talk about the cancer experience. We're talking about our entire selves. And so I think, while of course we're going to talk about this in the lens of cancer today, I still think, there are different parts of your lives and different parts of my life, that get involved in this conversation. But first, I wanted to kind of have this disclaimer. And I was, starting to write something, and then I was like, wait, didn't I see something really in line with what I'm talking about on Instagram the other day? If any of you don't follow this woman, which maybe none of you do, but Haley Gullen, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. She's a British author and illustrator who is about to come out with this book about her cancer experience. And I don't know how my algorithm served her up to me one day, but I started following her, and I highly, highly recommend following her if it's not triggering, because of course for some people it would be. But she writes these comics about her cancer experience and is compiling them in a book. And she's just fantastic. I just really, really love her. And she wrote this so perfectly that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give her credit, instead of trying to write my own. But basically, I want to make it very clear that while we're talking about building strength, that there's a very fine line between celebrating resilience, as she says, and victim blaming. So we're going to talk a lot today about strength and how to increase your feelings of strength. But that doesn't mean that the moments when you're feeling quote unquote weak, you're not succeeding, right? I would actually argue, and we'll talk about this a lot today, that those are moments of strength, being in touch with, if we want to call it weakness, that's fine. If we want to call it just being in touch with the negative sides of this, which I'm sorry, but cancer is a negative thing, right? I always say there's no silver linings to cancer. There might be what we call at Sharsheret unfortunate opportunities, things that you learn about yourself or your community or, your loved ones, ways that people rise up for you, ways that you rise up, to these horrible challenges, that we're faced with. But that, success looks different in different moments, and that when we celebrate our wins, when we celebrate our strength, when we talk about building up that strength, it doesn't mean that the moments when we're not feeling strong, we're not doing a good job. So I just really want to make that clear. This disclaimer goes over everything that we're going to talk about, for the rest of this talk. So, I'm a social worker, so I always have to start with, going to kind of the book learning of it all, right? So what is resilience when we talk about it this way? So scholars talk about it kind of in these three camps: overcoming the odds, being successful despite exposure to high risk, sustaining competence under pressure, right? Or adapting successfully to high risk, recovering from trauma. Certainly cancer is a very traumatic experience that is not just one trauma, right? We talk about our normal understanding of PTSD is like a soldier on a battlefield, right? That soldier gets to leave the battlefield. People who are going through cancer, and I do hate the battle terminology when it comes to cancer, but for this, I think it's necessary. When somebody's had cancer, the battlefield is their body, right? So they don't get to come off of the battlefield. You're living on the battlefield. And so that idea of recovering from trauma, the trauma, is in you, right? It's part of the DNA, right? And so it's a little differently understood. But, recovering from trauma and adjusting successfully to negative life events, I think we can all agree cancer is a negative life event. But basically in all three of these camps of scholars talking about resilience, they're talking about successful functioning in the context of high risk, right? So that leads us to what is success, right? And I alluded to this on that disclaimer slide, but success is always changing. And I can't tell you how many times like I said in the intro slide, I talk with people all day long about their cancer experience. And I can't tell you how often I hear this first line: sorry for getting emotional, right? Or somebody is taking a moment, trying to compose themselves, trying not to cry or apologizing for crying. And I constantly am saying, I'm a social worker. If you can't cry with me, what are we doing? Of course you should cry. Of course you should be emotional. This is emotional. So I think a lot of times people think if they cry, if they scream, if they rage, if they're scared, that's not a sign of success. And again, I would argue that actually is a sign of success, because it means you're in touch with all of this. if you're not in touch with your emotions as you're going through the experience or as you're unpacking it after the diagnosis or after treatment, then you're sweeping it under the rug. And if you sweep it under the rug, just like this lady on the screen, you're going to be tripping over that rug for the rest of your life. So, we really want to be getting into, the negative sides of this too. That is a sign of success. And, of course, success is really tricky language when it comes to cancer, just as the term survivor can be. I know a lot of people don't like the term survivor for many reasons. Either they have, family that they lost in the Holocaust. And so it's like, nope, survivor is, refers to that challenge, not this challenge. I can understand that. Also, for some people, they feel like it's like bad juju to call themselves a survivor because, well, we never know if cancer is going to return, right? So it can feel like putting it out there that I'm a success story when I won't know until, hopefully one day, many decades from now, if it hasn't come back. So success is kind of the same, right? Because success might refer to, a full remission, or it might refer to, no evidence of disease, or it might refer to, a successful surgery with clean margins, or, a treatment plan that's gone well. And yes, I love Donna shared thriver, not survivor. I love that terminology, right? Everybody has to figure out kind of like the terms that you're comfortable with. But when it comes to success in terms of resilience, right, what I really think of is that it is always ebbing and flowing. And so what that means is that some days it's a success if you can get out of bed and take a shower, right? And if that's it and you get right back in bed, that's fantastic. Other days, it's a sign of success for you to listen to your body and know, I don't have the energy to get out of bed and take a shower, right? And other days, a sign of success might be, I had so much energy, I went for a walk around the block, or I went for a hike, right? So success is going to look different on different days. And I think being able to be comfortable with that ebb and flow of it, is really great. And I hear, in the chat, Lori shared, I don't identify with the term survivor, but I also don't feel like I'm thriving. That's part of this, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about, is that you're not going to feel like you're just thriving every single day. And that is part of why, we're talking about this today is can we get you a little bit closer to that feeling? And maybe it's not going to be every day, because listen, I don't think anybody, cancer diagnosis or no cancer diagnosis, feels like they're thriving every day. Some days are harder than others, and some days are better than others, and I think that's perfectly normal. But yeah, I agree, the terminology when it comes to cancer is difficult no matter what. So just for today, we need to have a working definition. So based on all of those caveats and disclaimers, our working definition of resilience today will just be strength in the face of adversity, right? If you're going through a cancer diagnosis, if you've been through a cancer diagnosis, you have been faced with this hardship, this adversity, and we're just trying to talk about how to feel a little bit better, how to get closer to thriving, how to feel stronger. So today I'm going to give you 5 helpful tips to work on building your strength and your resilience. So this is going to take it back to a social work theory called the strengths-based perspective. So this is a little bit of a silly image on the screen, but it really is about getting to know yourself. You have to look in the mirror, look in your heart, however you visualize it, to get to know yourself well enough to know what are your strengths and how can you identify the tools in your tool belt and strengthen them. Yes, I see somebody else in the chat has shared that, some people, the day of their diagnosis or the day after, they consider themselves a survivor. There are a lot of people that are comfortable with that terminology, and some people that aren't. It's so interesting how different it is for everybody. So you just have to find, looking in your heart and in that mirror, figure out, what you're comfortable with. So my first tip is to fill your cup. you can't pour from an empty cup. I think this is something that hopefully we all understand, that we have to find ways to rejuvenate ourselves, right? We all feel depleted from time to time, regardless of a cancer diagnosis, but certainly with a cancer diagnosis, both physically, mentally, spiritually, you're going to feel depleted at different times. So you have to find what are the things that make you feel rejuvenated? What are the things that fill your cup? It's different for everybody. So for some people, like the really traditional things that you might have thought of right when you saw that image or heard me describing it, therapy, yoga, exercise, meditation, right? These are like the traditional things that we talk about, right? Fill your cup with these things. But these things can feel daunting. They can feel difficult. They can feel expensive. Please get in touch with Sharsheret or Cancer Support Community to find, resources, because there are resources that are free for all of these things, especially with a cancer diagnosis. So if you're interested and feel like they're outside of your comfort zone or outside of your wheelhouse, we can help make those connections to these resources. But I would argue that there are other ways to fill your cup, and they're really personal for each person. This is, again, you've got to look in your heart, look in that mirror and think, what makes me feel whole on the days when I feel a little empty, right? So for me, sometimes just going out for a fancy coffee, right? Just having somebody else make me coffee instead of my normal coffee I have every day. That, while again, can sometimes get expensive, especially here in Los Angeles. Sometimes that is like, somebody else took care of me, even if really that's me choosing to take care of myself, right? I know that on the days when I don't have my nails painted, and I paint my own, I don't go out to the salon. On the days when I don't have my nails painted, it's a direct line to what my mental state is. I don't feel good. I don't feel whole. And I recently moved from one place to another, and my nails weren't painted for a long time. And I felt like myself again when I painted my nails. It's, things like that are just how you feel. Yes. And somebody in the chat, getting coffee and not feeling guilty about paying $7. It's difficult. I can't do it every day. But sometimes it is absolutely worth the $7. And then, TV, right? I think a lot of times we call it a guilty pleasure. But I put it in my bio. You heard Rebecca say, like, I need time with my Bravo shows. If I don't have time with my Housewives, at least, once a week, I notice, like, I need that time to turn off my brain. And I know a lot of people judge the Real Housewives. I'm not saying they're wrong to do that. But that's my moment to turn off my brain and not think about the challenges in my life or my to-do list or, things like that. It is just complete escape. And so think about, looking at my list, right? What's on your list? Sometimes it's seeing a friend you haven't seen, or calling them on the phone, or, having that girls' night, or, whatever it is, right? Things for you that feed your soul or help turn off your brain for a little bit of time. For some people, it's knitting or gardening. For my husband, it's actually doing the dishes. If he doesn't get time to do the dishes, that's like his meditation, because he can just completely turn off his brain. So I think I found a good match, because I hate doing the dishes. I feel very lucky in that. Hallmark Channel, somebody said. I would love if you want to put in the chat, what are your, other people might call them a guilty pleasure, but what helps you feel whole? Let's get some more ideas flowing, so that other people can get ideas from each other. Wheel of Fortune, 90 Day Fiance, New Yorker cartoons. I love that. A lot of people do, Sudoku or New York Times puzzles. I love Annie got it right before I could say it. Acupuncture, absolutely. Karaoke, Housewives, great. Running my dog's Instagram account, exploring, going for walks, shows, meals with friends. Napping, absolutely. Listening to your body, knowing what you need. I love these ideas. These are really, really fantastic. And I'm sure nobody's alone in any of them. Okay, so tip number 2, get help. This one I know can be triggering for a lot of people, because when you look at this image, when you think about the idea of getting help and activating your support system, it makes a lot of people feel like, wow, I wish I had a support system, or I wish I had people that I could call in the moments when I need it. And, I've given lots of talks, like this, and I'll never forget one time that I was talking about like how to ask for help. And somebody said, that they had this friend who would always say, let me know if you need anything. And I always say, that is the worst thing you can say. Let me know if you need anything, because it puts all the onus on the person who's actually going through the hard time to ask. And you have no idea if you're going to get a yes or a no. And so I always say, be really specific with what you're going to offer, but that also means be really specific with what you're going to ask. So this person who shared that said they had this friend that would always say, let me know if you need anything. And she finally said, I need a ride to treatment, 2 Thursdays from now. Are you available? And she said, oh, no, I'm not. I'm busy that day. And she said, do you think I ever asked that friend for help again? And she didn't. And I understand why she didn't. I feel for both sides of that interaction though, right? Because I do believe that when people say, let me know if you need anything, they mean it. But the fact of the matter is they don't understand why that's not going to be received well. And especially why if somebody asks and they get rebuffed, they're probably not going to ask again, right? So I think sometimes it's about understanding your support system, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in another tip. But really, it's about how to activate the parts of your support system that can help, right? So sometimes it's your support system is a phone tree in your, your phone book, but sometimes it's thinking a little bit more outside the box, right? So maybe Sharsheret and Cancer Support Community South Bay are 2 big parts of your support system, right? We are here for exactly that, right? We are unbiased. We are not in your family. We don't have, a shared history where, things are going to influence how we're going to help or what we're going to be able to do. We're going to give you the support that you need in the ways that we can. We're going to refer you to the right resources, right? So if that woman had called me, I would have sent her to some transportation resources that might have been able to help her, instead of just asking a friend. Of course, sometimes friends can help, and that's wonderful if you have family or friends who can help, but sometimes people don't, or they don't feel comfortable asking, or they've gotten rebuffed and are not going to ask again. So thinking, outside of just Sharsheret and Cancer Support Community South Bay, or if you're in a different area, see if there's a cancer support community or a Gilda's club in your area, and we can obviously, also make those referrals for you, do that research for you. But think about the system that you're involved in, right? So sometimes it's your children's school or your school, if you belong to a temple or a church, or there's even just one in your neighborhood. Sometimes they have funds available to share, or sometimes they have a group of people who have signed up to help members in need, right? And they would take somebody to to their treatment, or maybe it's even calling 211 or some sort of governmental agency in your area, right? There are all these systems that we are all connected to, and you just have to think about how to activate them and reach out and find out, are there resources in my area? And like I said, Cancer Support Community and Sharsheret, we both have huge resource lists for you. So call us and we will, help you get the help you need, and also be some of the help that you need. And then also thinking outside of those boxes, sometimes even just reading a book, right? Written by somebody who's been through a similar experience or even a different challenge. I know there are so many books about the cancer experience. Well, sometimes they're triggering and you don't want to read them. Sometimes I know I keep seeing on, like I said earlier, like my Instagram algorithm obviously knows what I do for a living. So Gila Pfeffer is like always, talking about her very funny book about, her experience. And there are so many books out there, where you can feel that peer support by somebody, in kind of that parasocial relationship, where you feel like you're getting that support from them, even though they wrote this book. You don't actually know them personally. Then there are also all these Facebook groups, right? There are all these groups out there, that are really specific to either the type of cancer you have, the type of treatment you have, the type of reconstruction if you have breast cancer, You know, there are all these types of Facebook groups. Sharsheret also runs our own Facebook groups. You know, if you're part of our community, we can direct you to them. So, you know, thinking about, you know, outside of the box, what kind of systems, what kind of groups, and again, share in the chat if you have a thought about something that's not included on this slide that might jog other people's memories or minds, to think about, you know, what are the systems, you know, that you can access, you know, for this type of support. I'd love to hear, you know, any ideas that you all have. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I really love when these trainings and talks are conversational. So if you have any questions about any of these slides, don't wait till the end. You can go ahead and put those in the chat as well. Oh, Maria, that's so sweet. I always tell my patients to email Aimee. That's so sweet. And somebody's asking for the dog Instagram that somebody mentioned that they enjoy running. So please share that. Yeah, your cancer center. Absolutely, that should have been on the slide, right? Like there's a social worker at your cancer center who also has a lot of resources. Colleagues from work, I love that idea. You know, talk to your HR, see if there are resources available. And if you have those relationships with your colleagues where, you know, you can count on them for support, that's fantastic. That always makes me so happy. City and county transit, absolutely. Somebody's asking if they'll get the slides. If you signed up and said that you heard about the on your registration page, if you said that you heard about it from Sharsheret, I will automatically be sending the recording to everybody. If you did not select Sharsheret on that, then just email me. My email is in the flyer in the registration page, and it will also be on the last slide. So we'll share that. And I'm happy to send the recording to anybody. And then insurance companies have resources too. This is such a huge untapped resource. A lot of people don't realize that your insurance company has resources. I'll also add that your pharmaceutical companies, that you're utilizing their treatments, if you look up who makes the drug that you are taking, they often have resources if you reach out to them, either copay relief or, you know, things like that. That's a huge one. Those are great. Great. That's a lot of really great ideas. Okay, so my next tip is, yes, patient assistance programs. That's absolutely what that's called. And another shout out for Facebook groups. That's great. Okay, so my next tip 3, is manage your expectations. So this is a little bit in line with the last one, when I was talking about, you know, knowing the, you know, what you can expect from different people, you know, and knowing that, you know, dynamics don't change when there's a cancer diagnosis. So a lot of times we expect family or friends to step up in ways that maybe are uncharacteristic of every part of your history with them. That's not likely to happen, right? Every once in a while, people surprise you and they will step up in ways that really surprise you. But I think what's more often is that people surprise you when they're not so close, right? When they're not people that you would expect. I think those are the surprises that we get more often that are positive. I think a lot of times people surprise us by letting us down. And I can't tell you how many times I have heard that from people that, you know, their best friend just disappeared off the face of the planet after their, after their diagnosis, and they really expected them to be the one at chemo with them, you know, every treatment, and they weren't comfortable with it. And sometimes that's because they have some experience in their past that this is really triggering for them and they're not able to show up, or maybe they just, you know, society doesn't teach people how to show up in hard times. And I think that can be really difficult. And that's not to explain it away or, you know, take away the guilt of that, or the pain of that. But, you know, I think that people really don't understand how to show up for each other. And that's a real shame. You know, but sometimes people think, well, you know, they haven't stepped up for me in the past, but when this happens, they will. And, you know, they don't always. So, The other uncomfortable truth is that you will have to ask for help. And that is something that no one likes doing. I can't tell you how many times we hear at Sharsheret, I hate asking for help. I'm the one that likes to give the help. I've never heard somebody say, I love asking for help, right? Like, it's not comfortable for anybody, even if it's more comfortable for you than other people. Nobody likes to do it. But if you like to give the help, think about, why do you like to give the help? And realize that you get something out of helping other people. So these people that you have helped in the past will want to help you, and they will feel good. So sometimes if you could just do that little reframe, and think, okay, now it's my turn to give the gift of helping me to someone, that can make it a little bit easier. Okay, I see there's a lot in the chat, so I'm gonna hold for 1 second. I was fortunate that I did not get too many stupid things said to me. There are a lot of stupid things, that's very true. But even the very few stupid things said triggered me. That is an expectation I wish I had managed better for my own mental health. That's huge, Tolly. Thank you for sharing that. I think we're all guilty of laying in bed at night thinking of, something negative that was said to us or happened to us, sometimes months ago or years ago, when, we wish we could let it go. When we can try to hold on to the positives, try to hold on to the things that were nice that people said, and just let the other things roll off our back. Way easier said than done. But yeah, I think that is really something that's very important to try, to set ourselves up for that, like, expect to be disappointed and then you won't be as disappointed. It's a hard, uncomfortable truth again, but it's just the way that it is. And a lot of times people tell me, I can't believe that person let me down or said that thing or, whatever. I feel like I have to cut them out of my life. And while absolutely we should all cut toxic people out of our lives, and I'm not going to ever say you shouldn't ever cut anybody out of your life, I think there is something to say for the idea of just changing their shelf, right? So sometimes somebody is they're a top shelf friend or family member, right? They're a top shelf loved one. Sometimes they let us down and we just want to drop them in the trash, right? But I think it's better if you can just lower them to a lower shelf and understand that they might find their way up that shelf again. I actually had that happen with a friend where I felt like they really, really let me down during a very difficult time, and I couldn't understand why. And I remember thinking, this is the advice I give people all the time. I have to take this advice myself. And so I tried, instead of, keeping her in that top shelf, instead of throwing her in the trash, right? I tried just putting her on a lower shelf, and she did climb her way back up. And it took a couple years, I would say, probably, for us to get as close as we were before. But I would say today we're just as close as we ever were. So that is possible. It's not always possible, but I do really recommend that. Okay, back to the chat. In the cancer world, as well as the grief world and the mental health world, I find that people who've been through something similar are the most wonderful resources. I absolutely agree. And that's part of why Sharsheret has a peer support program. That's basically how we started. And why, those support groups and Facebook groups and things like that are so beneficial is, when you can be with someone who's been through something similar, it makes a huge, huge, huge difference. Somebody said, I don't know how to ask for help because I don't know what I need, but I need something. Okay, we will actually get to that in another tip. So that's a really good one and so universal. That is really, really a universal issue. Somebody else said, it's hard to ask for help because if who we ask cannot help us makes us not ask at all. Exactly. That's exactly like the example I gave earlier. It's so, so, so true. And so it is part of another tip to get to know, like, what is possible for each person. And I had a coworker 2 days before my bilateral mastectomy tell me he wouldn't see me in the office that week because he had COVID. That was 2 years ago, and I am still not over it. I can understand, these things, they stay with us, and it's very hard. Also okay that my circle is smaller now. Some people just can't handle that. Can't handle now that I'm the drama and not them, with a laughing, crying face. Yeah, absolutely. I think A lot of us had our circles get smaller, you know, when COVID lockdown happened. And also, I think as we age, our circles get smaller because we try not to like deal with other people's mess as much, right? And we get to know ourselves better. So yeah, and somebody said this helps so much with my current situation that I need to reshelf. Good, I'm so glad. And I'm really glad this is already helping. Okay, so you know, this is kind of what I was talking about, where someone just shared in the chat, you know, they don't know what to ask for, and you know, who to ask for what. So instead of thinking about these as these uncomfortable truths of, oh gosh, I really wish I didn't have to ask for help, let's try to reframe, right? What's a positive way of looking at this, and realize that you get to choose who to ask for what and what to ask. And so I really do recommend keeping a running list. You might have a grocery list in your phone. Open up another list of things that you might need, right? So if you know that the person who usually takes you to treatment is not going to be available, you know, 2 weeks from now or 2 treatments from now or whatever, put that on there, because next time somebody says who you feel comfortable asking, it's not just for anybody, right? Sometimes we have well-meaning coworkers who might say, let me know if you need any help, that you wouldn't actually feel comfortable asking that. But when somebody who you do feel comfortable asking that says, you know, let me know if you need help, you can open this list and you can look and you can say, okay, what on this list of things that I need help with, whether it's that ride to treatment, or I'm running out of toilet paper, or, you know, you know, whatever it is that you feel like is coming up for you, you know, when you can just open that list right when they say it, and you can say, oh, actually, and look at the list and decide what is in line with the depth of your relationship with them, right? So I'll never forget one Sharsheret caller said to me, I think this was like maybe last year, she said that the best support that she got from a friend was the silliest thing. She had people drop off meals, she had people help out with her kids, she had people do, you know, all these different things that were so meaningful and lovely. But she had this one friend who was a teacher of first graders, and first graders, some of them are very good at art, some of them are not so good at art, but they're not, you know, artists yet. And she, at least once a week, would send her friend, who was just, you know, she knew she was going through cancer treatment and having a hard time, she would send her friend a really funny picture that one of her students had created, that the student didn't realize, but she as an adult realized was extremely phallic in nature. And it was the silliest thing that she knew would make her friend giggle, right? And it's such a silly thing, but, you know, things like that, right? Like, and so anytime I have a hard time, I have this good friend who knows that I really like pictures of, we call them interspecies relationships. So like a dog that's friends with a monkey, right? Or like whatever, like 2 different animal types that are like friends with each other. This happens a lot at zoos and whatever. And she'll know if I'm going through a hard time that she needs to send me interspecies relationship photos, right? Other friends are really good at sending funny memes, right? Like, think about what are the things that you know this person shares with you, and you can say, when they say like, let me know if you need anything, send me some funny memes, like I just need to laugh sometimes, or send me something cute, or, you know, send me pictures of your puppy, you know, I want to follow your puppy on Instagram, whatever it is, right? So sometimes it's like that real support that you need. I need somebody to pick up my kid next Wednesday because I'm going to be at the doctor, right? But sometimes it is just like a funny thing, or a sweet thing, or an easy thing that doesn't cost money, doesn't take time. Or maybe it is, right? Like my go-to now, instead of saying, let me know if you need anything, is I'm going to Target tomorrow. What are you running low on that I can drop on your doorstep, right? So sometimes it's that simple of saying to somebody, hey, when's the next time you're going to the grocery? No rush, but if you could grab an extra blank for me. If they live close, they won't mind, and they will feel good doing it for you because you've been there for them. Somebody else said a list is a good idea, especially when people ask what you want for the holidays. Absolutely. Somebody else said, I saw a great reel on Instagram that had someone say how it was pointed out to them by their therapist that if they don't let other people help them, they're preventing that person from experiencing that wonderful feeling you get when you help others. It's also allowing someone to fulfill a mitzvah or a commandment or good deed of helping others. Absolutely. I mean, that's a much more succinct version of what I'm trying to say. So thank you, Annie. I love that way of summing it up. Okay, so next tip. And we've been hinting at this, but I was waiting for this slide to get into it. But really knowing somebody's strengths, right? Both your strengths and theirs, right? So what are you good at and what are you not so good at that you need help with? That's something that, is kind of between you and if you have a higher power, spiritual, practice or a therapist, that you can delve into that with. Kind of figuring out your strengths, but also figuring out the strengths of people in your support system. So I chose this picture of bridesmaids and a bride because I always fall back on this story of when I was choosing my bridesmaids for my wedding many years ago. I picked, your typical bridesmaids are people, who when I'm having, a fight with my future husband, or I'm dealing with stress from our parents, or, I can't decide about this or that, right? Like people that I could call and really have like heart to hearts with, who I knew would be very helpful in those moments. But I chose one bridesmaid who I knew would be really horrible in any of those moments. She is not the person that you call when you're having a fight with somebody, because she will actually egg you on to have a bigger fight, right? You don't call her for, advice about, these really difficult things, because she's going to make the wrong decision. But I knew that she was one who would get people on the dance floor. I knew she would make me laugh if I was feeling nervous before the ceremony. I knew that she would, be a real fun, entity at, my bachelorette party, right? I knew that she could offer something that the other people wouldn't offer in the same way, right? So thinking about your support system and understanding this kind of goes back to the shelf thing too, right? That people who you expect to show up in one ways and don't might still be able to show up for you in these other ways, right? So there are friends who you want to be that heart-to-heart friend, but if they're not capable of that, what are they capable of? Maybe it's just, going out to lunch and not talking about cancer and telling them, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to have a fun time. Can we just like be distracted, right? Or maybe it is, right? Like we were all sharing what kind of things we like to watch. Hallmark Channel. Do you have another friend who likes to watch the Hallmark Channel? Like say, I just want to watch a silly, holiday movie with you. Like, will you come over and bring some hot chocolate and I'll pop the popcorn, and I just want to have a moment where we're just having fun and not thinking about it, right? So kind of understanding what people are capable of. There are some people who I would absolutely ask, in a heartbeat to go pick up my daughter from school. There are other people who I would not trust having her, in their car on the road, right? So, who are those people that you can count on for things, and who are those people that you can count on for other things, right? And sometimes it's really hard to do that and to figure that out. And so I will say, your people at Cancer Support Community or your social worker at Sharsheret are here to help you talk that out, bounce things off of and help figure that out. Okay, so our last tip today is boundaries. And boundaries, I think, has kind of become a pop psychology term that can be a little misunderstood, right? So I think boundaries with yourself and with people and with your time are pretty well understood these days, but also with your identity. Cancer can feel like it is taking over your entire identity, right? It has taken so much control away from you. It's taking up so much of your time, right? That you feel like there's no you that's not related to cancer, right? But that's not actually true. And you have to carve out those moments where you feel like you again. That goes a little bit back to filling your cup, right? I don't think about being a wife or a mother or a social worker or a daughter or a sister, when I'm watching Bravo. Like I'm just a Bravo fan in those moments, right? Like finding those parts of yourself that need to be fed. For some people, it's like, getting an adult coloring book, like being that artistic side of you that maybe you haven't expressed in a long time. Maybe turning on some music and just dancing and not thinking about things, right? Like having those boundaries of, you know what? I get why I'm thinking about this. I get why I'm going there, but I'm just going to like draw a boundary, put a wall up in this moment and serve this other part of me for right now. Somebody shared, it took me a while to recognize this, but I am so much more than my cancer. Absolutely. You know, and I think it's really, really difficult for a lot of people. It feels like it takes over your entire world. And in a lot of ways it does. So that's why it's so important to carve out these moments to really feed your identity and find those parts of yourself, you know, that are not being fed. You know, I think also just boundaries with yourself and people and time. You know, you really need to figure out like, where do you need to draw those lines? Who are the people who you need to have certain boundaries up with, right? So a lot of times when it comes to cancer, people really try to ask all these questions. They're so curious and they have so many opinions, and sometimes you need to draw that boundary and say, you know, thank you so much for asking, you know, but we call it the cancer-free zone. I'm just trying to have a cancer-free afternoon. I'm just trying not to think about it right now. Or, you know, thanks so much for that advice. I'll go ahead and tell my doctor, but I just really don't want to talk about it right now. Thank you, you know, so that they don't never ask again, you know, but really having those boundaries of, you know, there are certain people who you will tell every detail to. You will tell them everything that your doctor said, and you will care about their opinion. Other people, like, you can't have that conversation with everybody, right? Like, you have to have boundaries over some of that. Another boundary that I've instated over the last many years is this TV remote, is that I used to love watching depressing shows and movies. The more depressing, the more I loved it. And I don't know if it's COVID or politics getting so crazy or becoming a parent, but all of those things combined, I can't watch depressing things in the same way. Sometimes every once in a while, but like, I know sometimes when I see something, I was like, oh, the old Aimee would have loved that. I can't handle it anymore. I need, in the short moments that I get to decide, you know, what to do with my spare time, I need something uplifting or funny or cute or silly, you know, and I just don't have the same capacity for that. Another boundary that I've drawn is I you know, mentioned, like, politics have just gotten crazy. You know, doesn't matter what side you're on of that craziness. I think we can all agree, like, it's just it's at a level that it has not been, you know, in the recent past. You know, as we were all growing up and becoming adults, it's very different now. So when things started to get crazy, I instated a rule with my husband. We both are plugged in and we like to talk politics, but I made a rule: after 9 p.m., no politics. After 9 p.m., we just don't discuss it, right? And so every once in a while he'll start to talk about it and I say, oh, nope, sorry, it's after 9 p.m. Like, we're not doing that. And so, you know, maybe it's something different for you, you know, but kind of figuring out, like, what are the things that you need to draw a boundary around. It's very personal, and you are the only person who can figure that out for yourself. Okay, so somebody in the chat said, I struggle with who I am after diagnosis. You are not alone, and I'm so sorry. But again, all of the support that we've talked about today, all of the ways to build up your strength, are also ways to find who you are now. So, you know, call Sharsheret, call Cancer Support Community, and let us, you know, help you, and let your support system help you find who you are, because there's no going back, unfortunately, to, you know, the day before you were diagnosed. But there is, you know, the search for the new normal, and that's really, you know, what this next step is. And then same, no depressing TV or books. It has to be lighthearted or fantasy now. Life feels heavy, so I want an escape. Absolutely. I think fantasy has been, like, blowing up over the past few years. You know, and again, I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I think it's just a pleasure, right? Like finding what that is. Somebody's asking to see tip one, that was fill your cup. And like I said, and Rebecca in the chat said, we will be sending out the recording to anybody who'd like it. So you can always go back. So just really quickly, and again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, because we're starting to run out of time. But I just want to talk a little bit briefly about ways that Sharsheret is here to help. So we have lots of different resources available, free care packages that we can send. Our Best Face Forward kit comes with makeup and lotions that are, you know, really geared towards understanding and combating the side effects of treatment. Our Busy Box for children ages 12 and under comes with toys for each child based on their ages and interests, as well as a storybook that explains cancer at a child's level and resources for the parents. Our Thriving Again Survivorship Kit. Again, we use that word thrive because we know it's really helpful, but it's really geared towards people, again, kind of like we were saying in the chat, you know, whether it's the day after you're diagnosed or 15 years later, it's really personalized to the needs of people dealing with what does survivorship look like to me, you know, in my life since this diagnosis. And everything that we do is really kind of focused on breast and ovarian cancer. So we have different versions of these kits depending on if it's breast or ovarian cancer, and also some of these kits for people dealing with the prophylactic you know, surgeries. So like we can send our Busy Box to somebody if they know they have a genetic predisposition as well. And we're also here for caregivers. So, and we use the term caregiver very loosely. So it's not only the traditional caregiver, somebody who's in the home, a spouse. It could be, you know, somebody who lives across town or across the country. As they care about you, they qualify as a caregiver in our mind. We also tailor all of our resources for people depending on if they have a stage 0 to 3 diagnosis versus a more advanced or stage 4 diagnosis. You know, there are slightly different versions of things that we send. And then also, you know, our support from our social workers is really geared towards, you know, being very specific to your experience. We also have 2 genetic counselors on staff. Really great support to people who have questions about either genetic testing or options, you know, as related to genetic testing. And I already mentioned our peer support network, but we really pride ourselves on matching people as specifically as possible to the issue that they want to discuss, not just, okay, you both have breast cancer, go ahead and talk. It's really very specific. We have limited financial assistance available, specific to the 4 buckets that you see on the right. You do have to qualify. So not everybody qualifies, but our income threshold is much higher than people expect. So a lot of people who think they don't qualify might. And there are different, you know, issues with all of these. So if you have any questions about them, please get in touch. I mentioned our Facebook groups, but we also have webinars like this one today, and we do record them and keep them on our website. So if you want a link to that, you can always find it at, I'm going to put it, sharsheret.org, or email me and I can link you directly to this page because our website has a lot, so it can be hard to navigate to find exactly what you're looking for. And we have fun webinars like music and movement where you get up and dance, or yoga. We have cooking demos, but then we also have doctors come and give reports on different things, and so you know everything you know is again very different, so that you can find what is good for you. So I think we've been doing this throughout, but you know, just kind of thinking about you know, thinking about how you've handled other situations in the past, you know, is going to help you figure out how to handle this situation in your present and in your future. You know, and I'm so glad that at least, you know, a couple people in the chat said that this has already been helpful. And I hope that as you sit with what we've talked about today, it will, you know, continue to be helpful. Somebody in the chat said, will there be a report back from San Antonio? Absolutely. If you don't follow Sharsheret on Instagram, there is, we are at Sharsheret Official. We will be posting videos from the San Antonio, I know it's SABCS, San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, I think is what it stands for. But that's happening, I believe, next week. And so we will be posting videos live from there. And then afterwards, we will be having a webinar on the topic with doctors reporting back from the news that's released there. So please email me, call Sharsheret. I'm in California, but if you're on the East Coast, we also have people on the East Coast. We have social workers in all time zones. So please get in touch and let me know if you have any questions or are interested in any of our resources. But thank you so much. I so appreciate how active the chat was. I always love, having these things be really conversational. And so thank you to all of you for your ideas and everything that you shared. It really made this even more, rich and rewarding for the people watching, I'm sure. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you so much, Aimee, for making the time for us for this meaningful presentation and sharing your tips with us. I'm sure it really resonated with our participants. As you can tell by the chat, it was quite lively, so the time just kind of flew. We do have a few minutes, so if there are any other questions that you might have been waiting, please feel free to put them in the chat. This workshop is being recorded, so if you do unmute yourself, your voice will be recorded. But thank you so much, Aimee, for your time. There's a lot of thank you so much in the chat. So wonderful, and I appreciate everyone's active participation. It really did feel kind of like more of a dialogue, which is really great. Wonderful. Let me see. This workshop is being recorded. So like Aimee said, you can email her. Or you can also email me at rebecca@cscsouthbay.org to get the recording.